Now, I have left India out because, well, let's say when it comes to sexual victimization, men in India are in a very rough spot, and examining that spot in this video would make it extremely long, so it will be covered in a different one. In a nutshell, consensual sex is criminalized by parents and daughters in the event that it happened within the constructs of an intimate relationship and the relationship was terminated. The reporting and criminalizing consensual sex as rape after a relationship is terminated is founded on the perception of premarital sex, especially in the context of women. So, consensual sex is widely used as revenge by women on men once intimate relationships are terminated. When it comes to sexual assault and rape, India provides a very interesting ground for research, primarily because of the double standards. Of particular interest is the fact that women in India cannot be booked for rape because the government bowed to pressure from women activists and restored the legal definition of rape to a crime that is only committed by men and only women can be the victims. The definition of rape in India implies that even if a man took a woman home and raped her in front of his wife, and the wife assaulted the rape victim during the incident, the man is charged with gang rape, but the woman cannot be charged with the same crime, because, well, for a criminal to be a rapist, they must have penetrated someone else. Now, while that is happening, women in India are becoming more confident, more educated, and more exposed than they were in the past. However, India still remains conservative, with virginity being highly prized, and women who is engaged in premarital sex experiencing difficulty when seeking marriage. The rate of premarital sex has significantly risen over the recent past, and so has the rate of false rape claims on the grounds of consensual sex being criminalized. Particularly, over a quarter of all instances of rape reported in India, mostly by parents who find out that their daughter is in an intimate relationship that contains intercourse, are based on breaching the promise to marry. These cases accounted for over 10,000 reports filed by police in 2016, as highlighted by Dylan in the article published by The Guardian. Rape is significantly used as revenge when intimate relationships end. Parents, and daughters alike, criminalize consensual sex in the context of relationships by reporting it as rape once the relationship is over. Particularly, parents use false rape accusations to cover the shame of their daughter engaging in premarital sex. Thus, Indian parents prefer dealing with the perception of their daughter being raped as opposed to her having engaged in premarital sex. Besides, Srinivasan maintains that over 40% of rape cases filed are consensual sex criminalized by parents, with an additional 25% being a breach of the promise to marry. Overall, over half the cases of rape processed in Indian courts are criminalization of consensual sex within relationships by either parents or women. Srinivasan explains that if a false rape accusation is not filed over false promise of marriage, then it takes the classic form of a girl being picked up by a moving car, given a drink laced with sedatives, then raped, just to emphasize the girl did not consent. These false accusations seriously harm the accused and trivialize the seriousness of actual rape by defeating the primary reason for having rape laws in the first place. Criminalizing consensual sex is founded on Indian tradition that places high value on female virginity, especially in the context of marriage as mentioned before. Thus, engaging in consensual sex and failing to marry the lady is perceived as lying to her, and therefore, prosecuted in Indian law as justice for what is termed as the dishonored woman. If a woman's honor rests on her sexuality, doesn't that go against the numerous campaigns against the perception of women as sex objects? Now, the accuser is required to prove that the accused did not have the intention of marrying her from the start. This is difficult to do because it relies on interpreting cognitive processes. Thus, the determination of intention is left solely to the discretion of the judge. Flavia Agnes, a women's rights lawyer, in writing for the Times of India, argues that most of the women who file consensual sex as rape are from impoverished communities, especially in rural areas, where men lie to the women with promises of marriage in exchange for sex. Flavia's concludes her argument by the assertion that rape laws should be a recourse for women to claim damages or maintenance. Of course, there are significant problems with the argument, which is part of the Indian law, to the extent that some of the men are forced into marrying women they have been in relationships with. Based on Flavia's argument, especially the aspect of maintenance, when it comes to filing rape on false marriage promises, social class matters more than the victim's age. So then, based on the argument, the cases of filing for rape on the grounds of marriage should be characterized with the man being from a higher social class than the woman. If that is the case, was the woman interested in a romantic relationship with the man in the first place? Because the man used a romantic relationship to obtain sex and the woman hoped that the romantic relationship would lead to marriage and her social status would automatically change. So a man is wrong for using a romantic relationship to obtain sex, while the woman is right in using the relationship as an economic opportunity? Too much for equality, don't you think? If women are more than sex objects, shouldn't men be more than success objects? Flavia's arguments do not reflect this. Besides, terming consensual sex as rape based on false marriage promises is not exclusive to instances where the man is from a high social class and the woman is poor. For instance, in this case, two colleagues, working in the same office, man and woman date for a while, man's parents pressure him to marry and introduce him to a girl he likes, man ditches partner from the office and plans to marry the lady introduced to him by parents, and office colleague files rape under the false promise of marriage. Well, the man was acquitted of the charges but not after he lost his job. His fiancée called off the wedding, the trial dragged on because the accuser continuously failed to show up to court, and his mother died because of a heart attack she suffered days after hearing the accusation. The fact that the accuser constantly failed to show up for trial is evidence that she was just out for the collateral damage. Or, a man has a relationship with an older woman. The woman is broke, the man pays bills including rents, son's medical bills, and eventual burial costs. The woman starts asking for more money and threatening to sue for rape, and she eventually sues for rape. It eventually takes 18 months to acquit the man of the charges. The constant rise in false rape accusations is worsened by the fact that the accusers do not need to reveal their identities, while the accused is known right after the complaint is filed, thereby ensuring that the damage is caused even if the accused persons are acquitted of the charges. In related news, the Criminal Law Amendment Act of 2013 passed following the Delhi gang rape of 2012 and set a minimum of 10 years for rape, especially in the case of minors. Prosecuting consensual sex as rape once a relationship is over implies that Indian women, in exercising their sexual autonomy, are not responsible for their actions or choices. Autonomy and responsibility go hand in hand, and as such, eliminating female responsibility in the context of dating results in the elimination of autonomy in marriage, which for me is unfair in both contexts. In other words, the perception and criminalization of sex outside marriage also affects sex inside marriage. Particularly, intercourse or related acts by a husband to their wife are not considered rape, even if it was against their wish. Thus, that responsibility is taken away from Indian women who term consensual sex as rape results in the autonomy being taken away in the context of marriage, which, again, I think is unfair in both contexts. I repeat, married Indian women lacking sexual autonomy is as unfair as unmarried Indian women lacking personal responsibility for exercising their autonomy in the context of intimate relationships. Thus, lacking autonomy and responsibility for Indian women is pretty unfair to society irrespective of someone's marital status. Now, the same traditions that facilitate the prosecution of an Indian man for rape on the grounds of breaching the promise of marriage, are the same ones that dictate wives cannot be raped by their husbands. Except, there is a double standard. These traditions are justified in prosecuting Indian men by allowing Indian women to essentially take back consent once a relationship is over, but they are deemed to be patriarchal when they eliminate the possibility of husbands raping wives or upholding women's sexual purity. Hey Kota, the Indian courts are male, at least as you call them when it comes to sex and consent within the marriage, and the same courts are female in the context of sex and consent outside marriage. Bottom line is, you either have an issue with both or with none. And remember, women in your country cannot be booked for rape, and only recently, did those courts you call male in your country acknowledge that men need protection from domestic harassment claims.